So my group is primarily interested in optical networks, primarily at the moment in optical access networks and in-building networks. So it's essentially about internet. For most people, they just log into their computers and they don't think what's behind it. But what's behind it is essentially 3 different networks. So the first one is a relatively small network that takes you the first, let's say, kilometer to 10 kilometers. And that takes you to a regional office, small office. That network is called access. Then behind it, there are larger networks, one around, let's say, a city, like Madrid, that would be metro, and then even larger networks that would connect within the country and even beyond it. So what happens today is that the most difficult part, and that's the part that gives people most problems, is actually the smallest part, the access part. So we came to realize that fact about 10 years ago, and that's why I switched the main research area of my group into optical access. Because when you are trying today, let's say, to download a big file or to have a conversation and you feel that you have a very slow connection, so where is that slow connection among the 3 segments? It's still in access. And the technology that is going to help us to break through these imperfections is indeed optical access, and that's why I'm working. Now, what are indeed the key challenges that are facing us today in access? So one we already talked about, that's bandwidth. Sometimes things are very slow, and we want to increase the bandwidth, or in more technical terms, the bit rate. The second one is delay, because sometimes, let's say you are downloading a movie, so it takes a while to start it, but then eventually it starts and it runs fast. But there is a delay, so that's a separate parameter, and the major challenge is to minimize that parameter. The third one that is very rapidly showing up on the horizon is the issue of energy. That's universal to almost every segment of the society, but it's valid for networks as well. The reason it is so is that because the bit rates, as we all know, are growing all the time. So there is more and more stuff that is being done on the internet. So because of that, the amount of traffic grows exponentially. And along with the traffic, the energy consumption also grows. So if we don't do anything, pretty soon we will have to spend all our energy on internet. And we can't allow it to happen. So we are searching for ways to reduce that amount of energy. Now, it turns out that there are certain technologies that can help with all 3 issues. And one of them is the so-called multicast, where essentially you can send the same information to many destinations very efficiently. Well, one thing that we wanted to achieve is to continue to strengthen our collaboration with UC3M. It began when my current host, Professor Lara Beatty, visited my research group at Stanford. And even then, we began to do some joint work. In reality, even though electronic means of communications do help today, there is still no substitute to physical presence. So we already see that we are able to move forward much faster because of me physically being here. So for example, we identified a nice and interesting problem of joining 2 issues that I just mentioned. One is the ultraflow approach, and the other one is the multicast. So one joint research effort that we are doing with David is how to create a marriage between these 2 approaches. In other words, how to do multicast and ultraflow networks. And that already led to a conference publication that we are doing jointly together in June. and in the future it will grow into a journal size paper, at least one, and probably more. You see, what happens is that there are a lot of talented people here. Similarly, I would like to think that we have a lot of talented people in my group at Stanford. But even though the guys are equally talented in both groups, they think differently. And that happens for several reasons. One is that there are two different countries. So people are different, they think differently, they utilize different approaches. So when you marry these two different approaches, beautiful things happen.